And for the last of the story of the one and only Ivan, let's see what happens. We are starting on the chapter called Finally. Julie and George take the pictures to the ring where there's room to see them all. An hour passes as they try to assemble my puzzle. Ruby's awake now, and she and Bob and I watch. Ivan, Ruby says, is that a picture of me? Yes, I say proudly. Where am I supposed to be? That's a zoo, Ruby. See the walls and the grass and the people looking at you? Ruby squints. Who are all those other elephants? You haven't met them, I say. Yet. It's a very nice zoo, Ruby says with an approving nod. Bob nudges me with his cold nose. It is indeed. In the ring, Julia pumps her fist in the air. Yes! I told you, Dad. There it is. Home. Home. George gazes at the letters. He spins around to look at me. Maybe it's just a coincidence, Jules. A once in a trillion kind of thing, like that old saying about the chimp and the typewriter. Give him long enough and he'll write a novel. I make a grumbling noise, as if a chimp could write a letter, let alone a book. Then how do you explain the rest of it? The picture of Ruby in the zoo, Julia demands. How do you know it's a zoo? George asks. See that circle on the gate? There's a red giraffe in it. George squints and tilts his head. Are you sure that's a giraffe? I was thinking more along the lines of a deformed cat. It's the logo for the zoo, Dad. It's on all their signs. Explain that. George gives her a helpless smile. I can't. I can't begin to. I'm just saying there has to be a logical explanation. Look how big this is. Julia puts the last piece of her Ruby's right ear into place. It's huge. It's definitely large, George agrees. Julia watches me. She chews on her thumbnail, and I see the question in her eyes. She turns back to the paintings and stares at them, looking truly at them, really looking at them. A slow smile dawns on Julia's face. Dad, Julia says, I have an idea, a big idea. Julia races around the edge of my painting, her arms spread wide. Billboard big. I'm not following you. I think this was meant to be on the billboard. That's what Ivan wants. George crosses his arms over his chest. What Ivan wants? He repeats slowly. And you know this because you two have been chatting? Because I'm an artist and he's an artist. Uh-huh, says George. Julia clasps her hands together. Come on, Dad, I'm begging you. George shakes his head. Nope, I'm not doing that. No billboard, no way. I'll go get the ladder, Julia says. You get the glue. I know it's dark out, but the billboard's lit. Mac'll fire me, Jules. Julia considers. But think of the publicity, Dad. Everybody will know about Ruby. You want me to put a sign that shows Ruby in a zoo with the word home on it in giant letters. George gestures towards my pictures. A sign, incidentally, that just happens to be made by a gorilla? Exactly. And you want me to do it without Mac's permission? George asks. Exactly. Nope, George says, no way. Julia goes to the edge of the ring, careful not to step on one of my paintings, and she picks up Mac's claw stick and she walks back and hands it to her father. George runs a finger along the blade. She's just a baby, Dad. Don't you want to help her? But how would it help, Jules? Even if lots of people see Ivan's sign, it doesn't mean anything's going to change. I'm not exactly sure yet. Julia shakes her head. Maybe people will see the sign and they'll know this isn't where Ruby belongs. Maybe they'll want to help too. George sighs. He looks at Ruby and she waves her trunk. It's a matter of principle, Dad. Principal. No. L-E, George corrects. Dad, Julia says softly, what if Ruby ends up like Stella? George looks at me, sighs, looks at Ruby, looks at Julia. He drops the claw stick. The ladder. It's in the storage locker, he says quietly. The next morning, I watch Mac's car slam to a halt in the parking lot. He leaps out. He stares at the billboard. His jaw is open. He doesn't move for a long time. Mad human. A mad gorilla is loud, but a mad human can be loud too, especially when he is throwing chairs and turning over tables and breaking the cotton candy machine. Phone call. Mac is kicking a trash can across the food court when the phone rings. He answers it, red-faced and sweating. What? he demands. He glares at me. I don't know who you're, he starts to say, but then he stops to listen. Who? Julia who? Oh, sure, George's kid. She's the one who called you. More talking with the phone to his ear. Can you call Lauren, please? And he's eyeing me suspiciously. Yeah, he says. He paints, sure. We've been selling his art for quite a while now. There's another long pause. Yeah, absolutely, it was my idea. Mac nods. A smile starts at the corner of his mouth. Photos? No problem. You want to see him in action? Come on down, have a look. We're open 365 days a year. Can't miss us. We're right off I-95. Mac picks up the overturned trash can. Yeah, I think he'll be adding more pictures. It's a, what do you call it? A work in progress. When the call is done, Mac shakes his head. Impossible, he says. An hour later, a man with a camera comes to take my picture. He is from the local paper, the one Julia called. How about you take one of me with the elephant? Max suggests. He drapes his arm around Ruby's back, grinning as the camera clicks. Perfect, the man says. Perfect, Mac agrees. A star again. A photo of my billboard is in the newspaper, and Mac tapes the story onto my window. Each day, more curious people arrive. They park in front of the billboard. They point and shake their heads. They take photos. Then they come into the mall and buy my paintings. While visitors watch, I dip my hands in fresh buckets of paint and I make pictures for the gift shop and pictures to add to the billboard. Trees with birds, a newborn elephant with glaring black eyes, a squirrel, a bluebird, a worm. I even paint Bob so he can be on the billboard too. I can tell he likes the picture, although he says I didn't quite capture his distinguished nose. Every afternoon, Mac and George add my new pictures to the billboard. People slow their cars while they work. Drivers honk and wave. My gift shop pictures now cost $65 with a frame. And the ape artist. I have new names. People call me the ape artist, the primate Picasso. I have visitors from morning till night, and so does Ruby. But nothing's changed for her. Every day at 2, 4, and 7, Ruby plods through the sawdust with Snickers on her back. Every night, she has bad dreams. Bob, I say after I've soothed Ruby to sleep with a story, my idea isn't working. Bob opens one eye. Be patient. I'm tired of being patient, I say. Interview. This evening, a man and a woman come to interview Mac and also George and Julia. The man has a large and heavy camera perched onto his shoulder. He films me as I make my pictures. He films Ruby in her cage with her foot roped to the bolt in the floor. Mind if I take a look around? He asks. Mac waves a hand. Be my guest. While Mac and the woman talk, the cameraman walks through the mall. He pans his camera right, left, up, and down. When his eyes fall on the claw stick, he stops. He trains his camera on the gleaming blade, and then he moves on. The early news. Mac turns on the TV. We are on the early news at 5 o'clock. Bob says, don't let it go to my head. There we all are. Mac, Ruby, me, George, and Julia. The billboard, the mall, the ring, and the claw stick. Signs on sticks. In the morning, several people gather in the parking lot. They're carrying signs on sticks. The signs have words and pictures on them. One has a drawing of a gorilla cradling a baby elephant. I wish I could read. Protesters. More people with signs come today. They want Ruby to be free. Some of them even want Mac to shut down the mall. In the evening, George and Mac talk about them. Mac says they're protesting the wrong guy. He says they're going to ruin everything. He says, thanks for nothing, George. Mac stomps off. George, holding his mops, watches him leave. He rubs his eyes and he looks worried. Dad, Julia says, looking up from her homework, you know what my favorite sign was? Which one? The one that says, elephants are people too. George gives a tired smile. He goes back to work and he moves across the empty food court like a giant brush, painting a picture that no one will ever see. Check marks. A tall man with a clipboard and a pencil come to visit. He says he's here to inspect the property. He doesn't say much more, but he also makes many check marks on his paper. He looks at my floor. Check. He examines Ruby's hay. Check. He eyes our water bowl. Check. Mac watches him, scowling. Bob is outside, hiding near the dumpster. He does not want to be a check mark. Free Ruby. Every day there are more protesters and cameras with bright lights. Sometimes the people carry signs and shout, "Free Ruby! Free Ruby!" Ivan, Ruby asks, "Why are those people yelling my name? Are they mad at me?" "They're mad, but not at you," Ivan says. A week later, the inspecting man comes back with a friend, a woman with smart dark eyes like my mother's. She has a white coat on and she smells like blossoms. Her hair is thick and brown, the color of rotten branch teeming with luscious ants. She watches me for a long time, and then she watches Ruby. She talks to the man. They both talk to Mac. The man gives Mac a sheet of paper. Mac covers his face. He goes to his office and slams the door. New box. Something strange is happening. The white coated woman is back with other humans. They place a large box in the center of the ring. It's Ruby sized, and suddenly I know why the woman is here. She's here to take Ruby away. Training. The woman leads Ruby to the box. She places an apple inside. "Good girl, Ruby," she says kindly. "Don't be afraid." Ruby inspects the box with her trunk. The woman makes a clicking sound with a piece of metal that she is holding in her hand. She gives Ruby a piece of carrot. Each time Ruby touches the box, she gets a click and a treat. "Why is she making that clicking noise?" I ask Bob. "They do that to dogs all the time," Bob says. I can tell he doesn't approve. It's called clicker training. They want Ruby to associate the noise with the treat. When she does something they want, they make that noise. "Great job, Ruby," the woman says. "You're a quick study." After many clicks and carrots, she takes Ruby back to her cage. "Why is that lady giving me carrots when I touch the box?" Ruby asks me. "I think she wants you to go inside," I explain. "But there's nothing inside except an apple." "Inside that box," I say, "is the way out." Ruby tilts her head. "I don't get it." "See the picture of the red giraffe on the box? I think that lady is from the zoo, Ruby, and I think she's getting ready to take you there." I wait for Ruby to trumpet with joy, but instead she just stares at the box in the silence. "I'm not sure you understand. That box might be taking you to a place where there are other elephants," I say, "a place where there's more room and humans who care about you." But even as I say these words, I remember with a shudder the last box that I was in. "I don't want a zoo," Ruby says. "I want you and Bob and Julia. This is my home." "No, Ruby," I say. "This is your prison." Poking and prodding. The lady comes again, and she brings an animal doctor with an awful smell and a dangerous-looking bag. He spends an hour with Ruby, poking and prodding. He looks at her eyes, her feet, her trunk. When he's done with Ruby, he enters my cage. I wish I could hide under, not tag like Bob. Instead, I do a nice loud chest beat, and after a moment, the doctor retreats. "We're going to need to put this one under," he says. I'm not quite sure what he means, but I strut around my cage feeling victorious anyway. No painting. No one asked me to paint today. No one asked Ruby to perform. There are no shows, no visitors unless you count the protesters. Max stays in his office all day. More boxes. I wake up from a long morning nap. Bob is on my belly, but he isn't asleep. He's watching the ring where 4 men are placing a large metal box. It's me sized. "What's that?" I ask, still blurry from sleep. Bob nuzzles my chin. "I believe that box is for you, my friend." I'm not sure what he means. "Me?" "They brought in a bunch of boxes while you were sleeping. Looks to me like they're taking the whole lot of you." He licks his paw. "Even Thelma." Taking? Taking us where?" "Well, some to the zoo, probably. Others to an animal shelter where humans will try to find them homes." Bob shakes himself. "So, I guess all good things must come to an end, huh?" His voice is bright, but his eyes are far away and sad. "I'm going to miss my stomach, big guy." Bob shuts his eyes. He makes an odd noise in his throat. "But what about you?" I ask. I can't tell if Bob's just pretending to sleep, but he doesn't answer. I gaze at the huge shadowy box, and suddenly I understand how Ruby feels. I don't want to go into that box. The last time I was in a box, my sister died. Goodbye. When George and Julia come that night, George doesn't get his mop or his broom. He gathers up his tools and belongings while Julia runs to my cage. "This is my last night, Ivan," she says, and she presses her palm to my glass. "Mac fired my dad." Tears slipped down her cheeks, but the zoo lady said maybe they'll have an opening there in a while, cleaning cages and stuff. I walk to the glass that separates us, and I put my hand where Julia's is, palm to palm, finger to finger. My hand is bigger, but they're not so different. I'm going to miss you, Julia says, and Ruby and Bob, but this is a good thing. Really, it is. You deserve a different life. I stare into her dark eyes, and I wish I had words for her. Sniffling, she goes to Ruby's cage. Have a good life, Ruby, she says. Ruby makes a little rumbling sound, and she puts her trunk between the bars and touches Julia's shoulder. Where is Bob anyway? Julia asks. She looks around under the table in my cage by the trash can. Dad, have you seen Bob? Bob, nope, George says. Julia's brow wrinkles. What's going to happen to him, Dad? What if Mac shuts down the whole mall? He says he's going to try and keep it open without the animals. I'm worried about Bob too, but he's a survivor. You know what, Dad? Julia has a gleam in her eyes. Bob could live with us. Mom loves dogs and he could keep her company and Julia, I'm not even sure I have a job yet. I may not even be able to feed you, let alone some mutt. My dog walking money. Sorry, Jules. Julia nods. I understand. She starts to leave, then runs back to my cage. I almost forgot. This is for you, Ivan. And she slips a piece of paper into my cage. It's a drawing of Ruby and me. We're eating yogurt raisins, and Ruby is playing with another baby elephant, and I'm holding hands with a lovely gorilla. She has red lips and a flower in her hair. I look as I always do in Julia's pictures, like an elegant fellow, but something is different about this drawing. In this picture, I am smiling. And we will stop there, and I will be certain to finish the book next time.